Be clear. The honest truth is this. Believe me when I say that people are fed up with the way politicians speak. A new report argues that using phrases like "the fact is," and "I understand what you're saying, but," makes people less likely to trust the politicians speaking. The survey also found that "pay attention, you two," people much preferred concise answers, rather than going into more detail. Maybe we should have done this item at the start of the programme. We'll be discussing this in a very simple, clear way in a moment. But first, let's have a look at some of the worst offenders.
Let me be clear.
Let me be clear, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear.
Let me be clear at the outset.
So let me be clear.
Let's be clear.
Let me be clear.
The real issue.
The real issue is...
And the real issue...
is a real issue.
In all honesty...
In all honesty...
In all honesty...
The brutal, honest, bold truth is...
The truth of it is...
The fact is...
The fact is...
The fact is... The fact is...
The fact is...
The fact is...
The fact is...
If I'm quite honest...
To be honest...
In fact, if I'm honest... And believe you me, Madam Deputy Speaker...
Believe me, you didn't join the Conservative Party where I grew up if you wanted to be a career politician.
Well, believe me, we're joined now by John Blakey, an executive coach and author of The Trusted Executive. Welcome to the programme. We'll be listening to make sure you don't use any of these phrases. Who are the biggest offenders in politics, then?
Well, one of my favourites is probably David Cameron. I think David Cameron was a very let me be clear, let me be very clear, and let me be absolutely clear.
Well, all in the same sentence.
I think we remember that from the Brexit debate, and unfortunately it was often followed by some impenetrable economic jargon. And that's the problem with these statements. They're an immediate red flag, they're immediate turn-off for a lot of people because they tend to precede exactly the opposite of what we've been told.
Are you guilty, you two?
I probably am, and for me, I think what I really hate is when people say, with all due respect,
Yes.
and they're just, scathing towards their opponent before they started. So I do think we are probably guilty of this, and I'm surprised we didn't feature on that.
Yes,
we got
you
away with it.
were
Got away with
cringing. Do you use any of those phrases? Let me be clear, if I'm honest, believe me, the honest truth is, the fact is.
Instinctively, they're not phrases that spring to mind when I speak, but my mother taught me something when I was very young, which was never trust a man who says trust me. And I've always kept that in my political career. It's lived with me always. So perhaps the realisation that you're trying to persuade people is what we do. So the believe me is an understandable one, because you are trying to bring people with you. But actually, if you're presenting a case, you hope that your argument's going to hold water anyway.
Why do nearly all politicians seem to speak in this way?
I think it's habit. I think if you spend your life in business, as I have done, then you pick up certain habits of language. And if you spend your life in Westminster, you pick up certain habits of language. So we're incessant imitators as human beings. So I think we pick this up very quickly from the people around us. And we have to work very hard if we want to change those habits and create a different impression or a more trustworthy impression with a very cynical and sceptical voting audience.
Which current politicians do you think get it right?
Well, I'm hesitant to say this, but Donald Trump, I think, in terms of his style...
Controversial.
Yes, Donald Trump, in terms of his style, I mean, if we ignore the political policies of Donald Trump, but if you think of phrases like America First, then America First is simple, it's short, it's emotive, and it appeals to the cares and concerns of his followers. So his style, the simplicity of that, the spontaneity of it and the emotive words has a way of engaging a certain cross-section of the population.
How do you break the habit, though, of using these phrases? Because I think presenters are probably guilty of using some of those phrases too, and I think we do it to give yourself a little bit more time sometimes to think about what you're going to say, a little breather. Do you not think that's the reason?
Yes, I think we're buying time, but if we think about spontaneity, that a lot of what people want to see now is spontaneity in our communication, that might mean we have to be prepared to make a mistake. And one of the things that I tell my clients, my CEO clients, is remember, before you were a CEO, you were a human being. And human beings are imperfect, they make mistakes, and they're spontaneous. And I think that's what we need to be doing more of.
Thank you very much. Now, just time